I commented earlier on a video that I was done kayak fishing for the season because the water has become too cold and I was worried about getting hypothermia and dying. Well, let me talk about the 1-10-1 rule and then you'll understand why I was concerned. Stay tuned. So here's the rule of thumb. If the water temperature plus the air temperature is less than 120 degrees, you'd better plan for the dangerous situation of falling into the water, because that's where the 1-10-1 rule comes into effect. So let's go through it here real quick, and I'll actually post the document to one of my websites. I'll put the link down below in the description where you can read a nice paper that was presented at my Cape Fear Fly Fishers meeting. So the first minute is for getting your breathing under control. Once you hit the water, the shock is going to cause you to hyperventilate, which will suck in more carbon dioxide and make it actually harder to breathe. So you've got to calm down and start to breathe carefully. Then you move on to the 10 minutes. The 10 part of the rule is about manual dexterity. You've got 10 minutes before you basically lose it, because what your body's going to do is it's going to pull blood from your extremities into the core to try and maintain your internal temperature. So after 10 minutes, you're not going to be able to do simple tasks like tying a knot or maybe even grabbing onto a handle to pull yourself back up on the kayak. So you've got 10 minutes to take action to save yourself, basically. A kayak rescue ladder or something like that is got to be implemented quickly. And in my earlier video, I talked about using a stand-up assist rope configured in a certain way as a kayak safety ladder. So you've got to basically unhook that from the front, hook it to one of your side handles, throw it over the side, get your foot in there, do the recovery to flip the kayak over, and then pull yourself in. A lot of stuff to do in 10 minutes. While we're on the 10 minutes, let's talk about swimming briefly. What's been explained to me is that swimming is actually a bad idea. Basically, it moves blood and heat back to the extremities, reducing the heat of your core, and then as the blood comes back to the core, it's now cold. So it becomes a downward spiral. So swimming, surprisingly, is seldom a good idea. You've got to get back on that kayak and get out of the water. Now, if you're real close to shore, you know, maybe it's a good idea to get to shore, but if you can't see it, you're screwed. Get on your kayak. And that brings us to the last point, which is the 1. You've got 1 hour before you get hypothermic. Now, it's important to realize that that hour doesn't start after the 10 minutes of losing manual dexterity. It's running from the minute you hit the water. So at the end of that hour, you're going to have hypothermia and be suffering all the bad effects of that, to include potentially losing consciousness. So in that hour, you've either got to be rescued or rescue yourself. And that's where you need to have either a radio where you can call the Coast Guard if you're inshore, a spot messenger where you can hit the 911 button and hopefully be rescued either inshore or inland, or hopefully your cell phone still has connectivity to call 911. But the clock is ticking. So obviously if you're out there kayaking in cold weather, you ought to have a change of clothes and a dry bag in your kayak, but it's going to be very difficult to get that out of your hatch, get out of those clothes while you're floating on a wet kayak without that manual dexterity. So all those are the reasons that I don't fish in the winter. I can't afford a dry suit, and I don't want to take the risk of falling in the water. Now again, I'll upload the document that was presented to the Cape Fear Fly Fishers so you can read more in detail about this, but I recommend against fishing in the winter unless you're really prepared for a dump, because the operative word is not if I'm going to fall in or if I'm going to flip. The operative word is when. When you're going to flip. It's going to happen to all of us sooner or later. Guidance, additional tips, hints, tricks, throw it all in the comments below, because this is the time of the year where cold weather safety is absolutely critical. And again, that's why my kayak is stored for the winter.